It is my joy to invite Dr. Dina Flessis to come and to bring the word. And Dr. Flessis is a member of Trinity United Methodist Church, where her husband serves as the pastor. And she is going to give the message today from the perspective of a lay member on what we have to offer. So I invite Dr. Flessis to come forward.
Good morning. I appreciate you having me here today. It's an honor and honestly something that's a little bit nervous. I get a little bit nervous about speaking to a lot of people all at once. I'm very used to speaking to people one-on-one. That's what I do in my job as a psychiatrist. I spend my whole day talking to folks, but on a one-on-one basis. So when Walter asked me to give a message this morning, I thought, well, let me try to think of it in terms of what I do every day. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about therapy. First of all, I decided kind of late in the game that I would title my message, Getting There From Here. So unfortunately, I didn't get that to Walter in time, but I think that is a good way to look at giving and moving towards tithing, which is a pretty big subject. But in terms of getting there from here, let me just kind of start with a question. I live out in West Ashley, so if I'm going to get from West Ashley over here to Mount Pleasant, how am I going to do that? How am I going to get there? Drive. Which way am I going to come? 526 or 17. That's about it, isn't it? That's about it. There's about 2 ways to get from that side of town over to here. You got to go 17 or 526. And what do you do when you're coming by 17 or 526? What are some things that happen when you're doing that? You got to cross a lot of bridges, and they're big bridges. And they go over a lot of water, and they're very high. And for a lot of folks, that's pretty scary. A lot of folks are not big fans of crossing bridges, and so they have a bridge phobia. And a bridge phobia, actually, here's your $10 word for the day, Jeffyrophobia. Jeffyrophobia, fear of bridges, fear of crossing bridges. So around here, it's very hard to get anywhere in Charleston if you have a bridge phobia. It is very difficult. I looked at Google Maps last night for a long time trying to figure out if I was in West Ashley and I had to get over here to Mount Pleasant and I couldn't cross a bridge, how would I do it? And I kind of gave up because you have to figure out how to get all the way up almost to Monk's Corner or up around the big lakes up there and come on down, and it's very difficult. So how do folks deal with bridge phobias? Well, they either stay isolated and don't go anywhere, or they decide I got to do something about this. This is not good for me. It's not good for my family or my work, so I'm going to go to therapy. I'm going to see somebody and talk to somebody about that. And that would be where I would come in. So they come and decide I've got to do something about this bridge phobia that I have, and we talk about the different therapies. One therapy that used to be used, but we don't use it too much anymore, is something called flooding therapy. That didn't sound very good to start off with. It probably wouldn't be high on your list, something called flooding. And it's not a very fun thing. What you do is you teach somebody how to relax. Okay, well, that's not too bad. But then what you do after you've taught them how to relax their muscles is then you expose them to this thing that they're scared of. And you just drop them in the middle of it. So for a bridge phobia, you would teach somebody how to relax, and then you would drive them up on a bridge, and you would leave them there until they weren't scared anymore. That's not very much fun. It's even worse if you have a snake phobia. I'm not very fond of snakes, so I don't want to go there. Spider phobias, things like that. Flooding would be basically putting yourself in a room full of snakes or spiders or whatever, and until you, I guess, passed out or you weren't scared anymore. So that a lot of people don't sign on to that kind of therapy because it's just too much all at once. It's just too hard. So what we use nowadays is a combination of what we call cognitive behavioral therapy and something called systematic desensitization. And in cognitive behavioral therapy, what you're doing is you're looking at thoughts and emotions and behaviors and how they're all linked. So for a bridge phobia, pretty much across the board, people will say the reason that they're scared to cross a bridge is what? They're afraid it's going to collapse, it's going to fall down. It's not a rational fear, but that's the fear they have. That's the thought, and the emotion is fear, and so they don't do it. And so in cognitive behavioral therapy, you confront the thought and say, now, what are the chances that really happening? Now, unfortunately, cognitive behavioral therapy for bridge phobias kind of fell apart on August 1st, 2007 in Minneapolis. Does anybody remember Minneapolis several years ago? What happened? Huge bridge. It just fell. It broke in the middle of rush hour for no reason. It wasn't a storm. It just collapsed. And there you go. They cemented that fear that, oh yeah, well, sure it can. That's a rational thought. See, that bridge fell. So that's a little bit of a setback. But anyway, that's the idea with that type of therapy, is that you get people to recognize their thoughts that lead to their fears and then their behaviors. With systematic desensitization, you do that. You work on that relaxation that they do in flooding and get people to relax. But then you do it a little differently. You work on what's called a fear hierarchy. You have people identify, what are the scary things about crossing a bridge, for instance. And then you work with them on first imagining going across a bridge and then eventually going across a bridge. And you do it very systematically. So it's called systematic desensitization. So for instance, you might have, somebody has a fear of crossing the Ravenel Bridge. You'd probably first start with having them look at a picture of the bridge, and that's all. Just look at the bridge. You do that over and over to the point where, okay, I can look at a bridge and not feel anxious anymore. I'm okay with that. Well, then you move to maybe looking at a picture of the bridge that's more close up or taken from the top of the bridge. Well, that's a little more anxiety provoking, but they've already done the first step. Second time, they're working on looking at the picture from the top of the bridge. All right, I can handle that now. I can move on. That's great. Well, then you got to move beyond the pictures. We got to take another step. So maybe what you do is have somebody park downtown and have them walk up to the foot of the bridge or the entrance ramp. With the Ravenel Bridge, you have this great walking path that you can use. So you can have somebody just walk up to the foot of that, maybe take a few steps on so they know that they're actually off of ground and onto a bridge. And then you help them relax. And they do that over and over to the point where they can do that and it doesn't bother them. They're okay with that. You just move on from that. So it would be walking up just a little bit of the bridge to walking up the first part, maybe all the way up to the first span and then back down real quickly. And then eventually they can walk all the way across the bridge and back. And then eventually, so you've done looking at pictures and now you've done walking on the bridge. Well, now it's time to get in the car. So we're moving along here. You get somebody to maybe ride in a car with somebody, because most likely they haven't even wanted to be riding in a car with somebody when crossing a bridge. But somebody that they trust, they get in the car and they actually drive over the bridge and drive back. And then finally, towards the end, when none of that is making them anxious, you can actually get somebody to drive over the bridge themselves. Now, they may not be able to drive themselves back, so it's always good to have somebody in the car with them, because otherwise they're stuck. And because there's no way to get back from Mount Pleasant without crossing a bridge. But eventually, the more they do that, in a stepwise fashion, they're actually able to drive over a bridge, and a big bridge, and they can do it without that anxiety. So it's a stepwise progression from being able to start with just looking at the picture all the way to being able to drive over the bridge by themselves. So when I think of giving, and especially of tithing, it's a little bit like that. It's the best way, I think, to address it is through something like systematic desensitization, where you do it step by step by step. Tithing is something that's mentioned in the Bible back in the Old Testament about giving 10% or the first 10%. 10% is a large number. That's a large number when you're talking about income, especially now. And if you ask somebody, you know, you really should be tithing, and ask them to do that all at once, it's like flooding. It's too hard. It's too much all at once. But if you move slowly and take it step by step and move at your own pace, eventually you do get there. If you examine your thoughts about money and about giving on the front end and looking at where your money goes, that's kind of the first step. When I look at that, you know, where does my money go, or where do I want my money to go? One big thing for me that I have, I don't want to say I have trouble with, but is an issue for me is that I love Apple products. Anything iPhone, iPad, MacBook, anything Apple product, I just love Apple products. And if you know where Trinity is downtown, it's on Meeting Street. 1 block away is the Apple store. It's very close. It's very close. And Apple, the way they make all their, or the store on King Street, it's just a glass front. You can see everything in the store without even going in. So I don't even have to go in the store to shop because it's all right. I just have to walk by. And everything's written in big print on the back, and everything that I want is right there. And they also have a great way of coming out with new versions of everything that I want. So I have an iPhone, but there's a newer one that's always coming out that they make me want. And I have an iPad. Well, now they want me to get a new one because this one's better. So when I look at my own spending and where my money goes, I look at things like that and say, you know what? I do need a phone, absolutely. I have to have a phone, and I'm going to choose an iPhone, and that's okay. Doesn't necessarily mean that I have to get the new one every single year. I would like to, but it's a little excessive. You know, I don't really need the newest version of absolutely everything. So that's one way that I look at making sure that I'm aware of where my giving, where my spending is, and where my giving is. Another obviously place to look in terms of guidance when examining your thoughts about these things is the Bible. There's also Methodist tradition. John Wesley. John Wesley he was a very interesting fella, very interesting guy. He had interesting thoughts on giving, and he was stingy, you want to call it, stingy with his money for himself. He was self-stingy, but gave away most of his money. He lived on very little and gave away everything else. Very difficult to follow his what he set out to do. I think it would be almost impossible. But if you look at what he focused on, which was examine examine where your thoughts are, where your desires are, where your money is going, and then also look at where you want to be giving and where you want your money to be going and what you want it to be doing. You can make some changes. But again, you have to be intentional, and you have to do it slowly for it to actually work and for something to come of it, I think. Again, if you try to do it all at once, it's very hard. Folks get turned off, and it's just very difficult. But when doing it step by step, you can actually get there. And I think what you're doing right now with Consecration Sunday and working up towards that. You have a lot of things here at Point Hope that you are wanting your money to go towards. There's obviously things, buildings and those sorts of things, but your mission statement, the things that you want to do and be a part of the Mount Pleasant community and how you want to help folks in the northern Mount Pleasant area, all of that is where you're wanting your money to go. So, in conclusion, in terms of how do you get there from here, I would say you do it stepwise, one step at a time, so that you don't feel overwhelmed and flooded.